Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you to take your seats, please? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you to take your seats, please? Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we still have a full afternoon, and we will start, of course, with a panel of sustainability reporting, but preceded by one of our technical and highly appreciated managers, specifically on the topic. We will then move bit by bit to the state of play of financial reporting, and of course, end today's session with the connectivity of building bridges. So, ladies and gentlemen, as a first introductory speaker for this afternoon, I would like to introduce Elisa Bevilacqua. She is EFRAG she's EFRAG Sustainability Reporting Senior Technical Manager, and she joined us in September 2022, but of course she is having a very important role. She leads the works on SMEs and final institutions. Elisa has 23 years of experience in the financial sector, and she focused a good part of that on corporate social responsibility, green finance, ESG risks and sustainability reporting. Before that, she was working in the sector of the cooperative banks. I gladly give the floor to Elisa. Elisa, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to introduce this panel and provide a short overview of EFRAG's two work streams on SMEs. The first one is the listed SMEs, the standard, the LSME ESRS, which is the legally binding standard in CSRD, and it is a derogation from main ESRS. It will be adopted as delegated act by the European Commission, and it is applicable from 2026 with the two further opt-out options. Who is in the scope of LSME? Of course, European and non-European SMEs with listed securities, so debt or equity in EU-regulated markets. Then the small non-complex banks, which are the biggest population in scope, and the captive insurance and reinsurances. So for them, the CSRD requires EFRAG to develop a proportionate standard, so relevant to the scale, capabilities, and complexities of their activities. The LSME also has another important function of market and public accountability. So it is as well expected to support the availability of ESG information from the smaller issuers to the financial market participants. Not to avoid discrimination on those entities and enhance their access to sustainable portfolios. So from that perspective, it is expected to incorporate as well the SFDR-PIs and the taxonomy disclosures. And in that sense, EFRAG had to balance, on one hand, the proportionality objective, On the other, the investors' needs to develop this standard. And by doing so, we have achieved a number of simplifications, and the TAG has approved recently the text. And in particular, we have achieved a substantial reduction of disclosure requirements and data points, about 50% compared to the Set 1 ESRS. Further simplifications will also be discussed by the SRB tomorrow in view of the approval of the LSME as exposure draft. I think it's important as well to emphasize the technical and legal role of LSME as setting the value chain cap. So it determines the maximum level of information that large companies may obtain for the SMEs from their value chain in their sustainability reporting. So important function. And we have analyzed carefully the Set 1 disclosure, in particular the ones with potential trickle-down effect, both on SMEs and listed and non-listed, to minimize the burden for SMEs deriving from larger corporates reporting. This point will be an object, of course, of the consultation, and it will be an important dimension to cover. So now moving to the VSME, this is the voluntary standard for non-listed this time, micro, small, and medium-sized undertakings, which are the vast majority of companies in Europe. And it is outside the scope of the CSRD. So why do we have VSME? This is to satisfy a market need, which is the fact that the market needs a simple tool for reporting for SMEs, a standardized tool, which allows SMEs to achieve two objectives. On one hand, to allow them to start the sustainability journey, so start monitoring their ESG performance, increase their competitiveness, resilience. On the other, as well, to provide them a recognized data set to be able to face the requests from their counterparts, and the business counterparts that are requesting through questionnaires or various data requests those information for the purpose either of their sustainability reporting or for their management of the sustainability matters along the value chain, meaning that the banks, the larger corporates, the investors need those data for the ESG risk management, the sustainable finance, or the supply management purposes. So this role was also emphasized by the European Commission in the recent SME relief package. And in particular, the VSME was indicated as a measure to support SMEs in accessing sustainable finance. So an important market role, which we have also taken into account in our work by including analysis of current questionnaires, by engaging extensively with stakeholders to incorporate these stakeholder and market aspects. Now the VSME is also reflecting the differences of very different companies, from the ones below 10 employees up to 250 employees. So we're talking about a different range of companies. And to do that, we have included a high level of flexibility, which concretize in a modular approach. So a modular system that SMEs can choose, and in particular 3 modules. So the first is the basic module, which is the entry-level for all SMEs and the target for the micros. It is basic metrics, mainly metrics. It can be combined with a narrative, which is to be used by SMEs that already have policies, actions, or targets in place and want to describe them, and or with a business partner model, which is to be used by SMEs when they have data requests from their business counterparts. So namely, again, banks, investors, or larger companies. And the market acceptance of the standard will be key for its success. And this is why we really invite all of you as well to participate to the public consultation. It will be very important to understand to what extent business partners will be ready to abandon their current multiple questionnaire and replace them with VSME, hence allowing for an efficient data flow system and reduce the burden as well for SMEs. So this leads me to the final word on the public consultation. We expect to launch the public consultation in mid-January, so next year, for both standards, LSME and VSME, with a 4 months duration. And of course, we will test this market acceptance aspect, and in general, the simplifications achieved in both standards. We will also run extensive field tests, and so we also invite you to participate. And we will run a cost-benefit analysis in between. And finally, we hope to deliver, that's the plan, the 2 standards, the VSME and LSME, in autumn 2024. So with this, I would leave you and wish you a good discussion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, like I did this morning, I will introduce the person that is running, of course, the next panel on European sustainability standards for SMEs, and then that person will introduce the panel. The panel will be led and coordinated by Sven Gentner. Sven Gentner is the head of the unit corporate reporting. Sven Gentner is in reality or day-to-day contact within DG FISMA and together with his team. So it means whether this is on the technical side or it is on also European Commission, European Parliament, we always concur and check together with Sven. I understand that Sven started his career in the private sector in an insurance company that is ending with a Z somewhere. The floor is yours, Sven.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much to Elisa, I think, for these very helpful explanations, which really set the scene for this panel very well. And I think it's a privilege to have exactly the right people now with us to discuss this. People who will have to use these standards, or at least represent the ones who will use the standards, people who will have to audit this, and then people who will probably use the output both from the corporate and the banking side. So I will introduce my co-panelists. First, there's Véronique Willems from SMEunited, Secretary General. Then we have Etienne Barel, the Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the French Banking Federation. Then we have Cristina Saporetti, Head of Sustainability Reporting at ENI. And we have Salvador Marin, the President of the Federation of Accountants for SMEs, EFAA, and also an SRB member within EFRAG. I mean, as Elisa has explained already, these standards are indeed very important, and in a sense they're supposed to serve a number of roles. They're supposed to help the SMEs report if you want better or in a simplified, coherent way, but they're of course also supposed to help the users who will look at this information, who need this information in the value chain, to make best use of it. So we need to, in a sense, bring all of these various aspects together in those standards. So I would like to ask first the panelists to, in a very open way, explain from their perspective, what do you expect of these SME standards? And maybe, Véronique, do you want to start?
Yes, I will. But I would like to start with briefly also reacting to the objective of the standard that Elisa presented, because one of the objectives was have SMEs start their sustainability journey. I would say that at the moment a lot of small companies are already for a long time on that path of sustainability, and what the standard will do is formalize that path through reporting. I think that's a very important distinction. You have activities that contribute to greening your activities, and then you have showing that in one way or another by reports or by green claims or whatever. And I think the standard is a tool to report on being on that journey of sustainability. And then you can already imagine what my next comment will be, because small companies are more into action rather than into reporting on those actions. So for us, it's very important that we have a very simple standard, simple in language, simple in requirements, simple in data sets required. That's the first thing that we expect from the standard. The second thing is to avoid double reporting. We clearly heard from Elisa, the need for market acceptance is one of the key elements that will also be tested in the public consultation. When small companies start using that standard for reporting, they want to avoid that additionally they will have to provide other reporting to banks, to their value chain. So also curious to hear your views on that part. What is important for us as well is to link as much as possible to already existing legal obligations, again, to reduce the amount of time that companies have to invest in compliance rather than in doing business, what they're supposed to do. The information also has to be easily available, and for that one I think that we will have to still see how we will develop the tools to get to the data sets required, because it's one thing doing the reporting, but before you can write down, and I always make the comparison with the financial accounts at the end of the year. It's easy to put in the turnover, it's easy to put in the amounts of depreciation, but there is a whole amount of rules and information behind, and Salvador will be able to say a lot more about that, on how you get to those figures, and that will be the same for the data sets that have to be provided in the voluntary standard. And then the whole has to be, of course, well put together in a template that is easy to use for small companies.
Okay, thank you. So maybe turning to Cristina, from a user's perspective, from a corporate, what is it that you expect from this standard?
So first of all, it's important to say that Eni is for sure not a small and medium enterprise. So today I have the opportunity to bring the perspective of a large corporation that will need, and it's important to engage with the entire value chain in order to enable a systemic transformation of the industry. So that's why it's important for a large corporation as Eni. We have defined a carbon neutrality strategy up to 2050, and to do so, we need to engage with the entire value chain, as one single actor cannot achieve those targets alone. So having defined a carbon neutrality strategy, we also have defined a just transition framework in order to engage with all our relevant stakeholders, from workers and communities, but also clients and suppliers, as we have to go all in the same direction. And for that, it's very important to have a small, medium enterprise standard to help create awareness in the entire value chain of the importance of the sustainability path that we need to take, and to for small, medium enterprise to understand business threat, but also opportunities they can grasp for also larger corporations that will need the value chain and all the supply chain actors to be ready to these new challenges. But of course, I definitely agree that the SMEs standard should be proportional to their size and should be simple. So I definitely agree with what you said, Veronique.
Okay, sounds like a good start. Etienne, and from the point of view of banks?
Well, from the point of view of banks, we have perhaps two pathways. The first one is to say that we need this standard in order to comply with our own ESG reportings. And here, that's one pathway, but that's not the pathway I want to choose. I want to choose a pathway to say I need this standard to engage with SMEs who are clients from the banks and to assess better the impact, the risks, the opportunities for these SMEs. So it's a bit the difference between a pathway to say I have myself rules to obey, and so perhaps I want to decarbonate my own balance sheet, and the way to say no, what is important is to decarbonate the real economy. So the difference you made between action and reporting. That's not to say that we are not very interested in this reporting, but this reporting at start must be devoted to help SMEs and not only to help banks do their own reporting.
Okay, thank you. And then Salvador, your members will have to look at this and provide the assurance. So what's your point of view?
Okay, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank a special thank to EFRAG for preparing this conference. The president, Mr. Hans, Patrick Cambu, Saskia, the excellent Marin team, Chiara, and Gemma, and the rest of the members, the colleagues. I know that they are working very well, not only in this standard, in general, for the rest of the standard, a lot of meeting, a lot of activity. And of course, thank you so much, the rest of the panelists, to share with me the point of view. The rest of the colleagues, the participants, that they are listening to us in person or by online. For me, for us, the good news is that we have the listed SMEs or the voluntary SMEs here. We have today these listed SMEs and this voluntary SME. For me, it's more important voluntary SME than listed SME, but listed SME is good too. And for me, the good news is that we had this standard. Imagine if we didn't have it. Imagine 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I am very happy, we are very happy because we had introduced in the agenda of the European Commission, of the EFRAG, the voluntary SMEs standard. For that reasons, I think it's good that we had the voluntary SMEs standard with us today to discuss. This is the first point. The other point is the voluntary SMEs standard is a means for SMEs to contribute to transition to a sustainable economy with relevant information. Commissioner McGuinness, she said, this is important to transition. We need time, and for that reason, it's important that you bear in mind this information when you request this data for SMEs. Other important thing is this voluntary standard should be used as a tool to help SMEs manage the needs of the different stakeholders. This is the other important point that I would like to highlight. No? The tool, and the second important thing for us is this standard to provide sustainability information to their stakeholders, including large companies, no? The value chain that my colleague Lutz said in the previous panel. And of course, those providing them finance, for example, in particular banks, is another important point that I would like to highlight. Don't forget that for example, my seat in the EFRAG Strategic Reporting Board representing SMEs and SMEs. No? SMEs, they are the primary trusted business advisor to SME. They understand very well because we are SMEs too. For that reason, we can share with the general society what is our views in our relationship with SMEs. And for that, my expected that we would like to take input from the society, from the society or for the SMA or from the FSMPs when this voluntary SMA standard will be public. This is my point.
Okay, thank you. So maybe let's look a bit closer at the VSME standard. And I mean, so it's supposed to do a lot of things at the same time. It needs to cater for really micro entities, but then also maybe entities up to 250 employees. It's supposed to simplify the reporting for SMEs, but in a sense it's also supposed to replace all the different questionnaires which are floating around at the moment, and unify this in one single document. So what EFRAG has opted for at the moment is a modular approach, and is basically giving different options in terms of module 1, 2, 3. So what I would like to understand better from maybe Véronique, you think this is the right way to go?
Well, I think it will be very important to ensure that it remains simple. That's the first thing, simple and stupid. Preferably not the last, but you need to make sure that it's still clear for a small company what it's offered. And I would like to stress that 93% of all companies in Europe have less than 10 employees. So that in any case is the biggest group. Out of those 22.5 million SMEs, around 20 million are below 10 employees. So that's something that we always have to keep in mind. It's also what I'm stressing with decision makers often at the moment to get that into their heads. The modular approach should indeed also provide solution for more targeted information or more sector-specific information. Taking into account that SMEs are not in the scope, but will have a lot of information requests anyway, in that perspective, it could be a solution. But we will have to see on the build-up and how SMEs will react also in the test, as mentioned, with Elisa.
Yeah. Okay. Salvador?
Well, regarding the modular approach, I had to highlight the importance of think small first. This is my first point. No? Instead, this voluntary standard has been developed having the small company in mind, because the reduced standard for listed SME is not the start for non-listed SMEs. This is another important point. No? Therefore, from this voluntary standard for non-listed SMEs, then we scale out for larger, more complex entities approach. No? And the modular system helps SME on a step-by-step journey of sustainability reporting. We especially welcome the simple data set that has been tailored to the micro entities. And we must remember, the other speaker, Elisa, has said, we must remember that vast majority, Veronica too, vast majority of SME, over 95% of business in the European Union are micro entities employing less than 10 employees. Accordingly, the voluntary SMEs must be affordable. This is another important thing. And even for large SMEs with greater resources and more complexity, the modular system offers additional modules from them to use. This is other additional point that I would like to highlight. No? This modular approach is, in my personal opinion, an excellent way to solve the differences between all the types of SMEs. It's another additional point that I will remark. At the end, you will see that the differences perhaps we could reduce.
Okay, thanks. Cristina, go ahead.
Perhaps just two comments. I'm very well aligned with what has just been said. To two other elements, perhaps we should pay attention to the fact that many SMEs won't have all the data points. So you should avoid an approach which is take it or leave it. That is, if you engage, even if you don't have 100%, that's a first step, and that should be taken into consideration. And second, the modular approach is okay with me, but you should avoid the fact that if for financial institution everything is in the business partner module, and so 90% of the SMEs will just comply with the basic module and just 10% with the number 3 module, well, we will have to come with our own questionnaires, our own data set, and so on to all SMEs. So perhaps to keep that in mind, and perhaps think about more modular approach towards the complexity of the sector, complexity of the SME itself, than regarding the data set itself.
Okay. Maybe to go back to the basic model, where the idea, if I understand correctly, is to say this is really the simple starting point, and it's meant for the smaller, really small entities, non-sophisticated. When you look at it at the moment, you think it's simple enough for a small SME to apply without a lot of outside, possibly expensive help or additional explanations? Véronique?
But I think that the proposal by EFRAG to do that test with entrepreneurs is really going to be the key test to see whether or not it's feasible for small companies to use that basic module and move forward with it. I think it's very important to at least provide something. I've already said it at a certain moment. It cannot be the idea to, again, make consultants and I don't know what filthy rich, pardon my language, with European legislation, because that's what we've had with the previous proposal, not from your services, but from another service. It's a 4-letter word that is dreaded in Europe by entrepreneurs. So we have to be careful that we make sure that at least when they want to, they can work with it. Secondly, I think we also have to take into account that at the moment, the number of professionals who are qualified to do that sustainability reporting is very low. And that they are at the moment also very expensive. So we have to make sure, we also have to take the proper measures to ensure that SMEs will have access to those qualified and affordable sustainability reporting professionals. And I think in that perspective also capacity building for the SMPs will be crucial. A fourth element or a third element is really the awareness training, the awareness raising and the training of small companies. The tools that will be available for data collection, and there are already a lot of tools in the market, but we will have to make sure that they are also validated one way or another, and that companies have access to training in a normal and in a good way, and that I'm also looking a bit at you there. The Commission will also have to take a bit of responsibility, in my view, because you're putting in the market a legislation where the whole market has to comply with, and you can then not say, yeah, and now we back down. So we will be coming to you again on that issue as well.
It's a threat.
No, that's a promise, not a threat.
And of course, we're looking forward to it.
We cooperate on
that.
that.
Exactly, we
Voilà.
cooperate. No, I think it's been stressed also this morning by the Commissioner how important this phase of implementation now is, and that in a sense we need to mobilize everyone to make this work and happen, and in a sense also to all be reasonable if you want. I think you said it will also take time for things to happen and become available. And I think everyone needs to be aware of that, because if not, it's not going to work out.
Right. If I take the example of banks, I have to make this pedagogy first to my employees. And so all the relationship managers, I have to coach them and to explain them how they have to engage then the clients. And it takes time. So really you have to build up this capacity. And we've seen that what is very important is just what Véronique highlighted here. It's all the guidance, all the tools that you can provide them with concrete examples. Even if they are very simple, they are very reassuring for our people and for their counterparts. So I would really support this idea of EFRAG stepping into a bit this implementation phase, so how I make it tangible, these standards to fulfill.
Definitely.
I just want to comment also that it's not just for small, medium enterprise that you need to build skills, but I think it's very important also for large corporation, and we are seeing that even though we have been reporting for a long time, we still need to create a lot of capacity building, involve all the different functions, because now sustainability is not anymore one unit that gives you the data, but it involves the entire company. So it's a struggle also for large corporation as well. So we will need tools also.
Of course, about simplification or so language or modularity always is good, no, for SMEs. Proportionality is my principal focus in the Society Reporting Board standard. Is my principal voice. It's very important, the proportionality, of course. But the question is, for me, it's important that bear in mind that the small entities can't benefit from the experience from the listed SMEs, no? We need time. We need time. For those reasons, my proposal is that perhaps it's a good idea to encourage the use of the voluntary SMEs standard as soon as it's ready, in late 2024, in autumn, no? So that non-listed SME can make a start, and don't wait until 2026, because we need time. If we want to the SMEs get involved, we must facilitate the adoption, no? And we can facilitate is they can use the voluntary SMEs already. If we have the voluntary SME standard, why not? Why not? It's important to try to disseminate is between the community of SMEs. Of course, the SMEs we will have in this activity, but it's important offer this information already. And of course, I read the information from Elisa, the market acceptable. Of course, I am sure that if you introduce the voluntary SME standard already, the market will be easy to accept it.
Sure, go ahead.
I think it's important to develop tools. I think it's also very important to see what is already out there on tools, so that we don't start multiplying and reinventing the wheel, but also look at what is already available and maybe also multiply best practices. On implementing, I think there's already a lot of pressure on small companies at the moment to report within their value chain. And I think it might be a good message to also signal that they will get time to comply. Because at the moment we are creating a lot of uncertainty, unrest, at points sometimes even panic with small companies and entrepreneurs. And I think giving them the signal that also authorities and their value chain will give them time, and not, as I've already heard, certain big companies saying, okay, if you don't comply, we just cut you out. I don't think that's the right approach, certainly not at the moment. As I said, preferring first action to do something about climate change rather than investing all resources in reporting. I think we really need to give that signal as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because if I may, I'm just, here. I'm here to give the message which is completely united across the banking sector, not only in France, but in Europe. We are here to finance the transition. We are not here to say here is the good guys, the bad guys. We are here from getting an economy which is brown to be greener, not to say we are here to just finance the green. So really it takes time. It's a transition, and we are here to help it.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think
not to exclude.
That's the key point. It's not a box-ticking exercise. It's an exercise to achieve something. And maybe just to add also, I mean, as the Commissioner said this morning, I mean, we introduced a lot of flexibility, I think, in both the CSRD and the standards to be able to give time also on value chain reporting. But sorry, Salvador, you wanted to say.
Only one question. Following the other remark from Elisa about the competitiveness of the SMEs, my point of view, my experience with SME, that it's important to know that the simple tools Of course, simple tools can support the preparation of disclosure with limited help for a external consultant. This is the first point. But the question is that we need to try to avoid a wasting of time of the part of them and external consultant. For that reason, if you prepare a very good tools, and for other side, external consultant together with SMEs, they can help to SMEs to increase their competitiveness with benefits greater than the additional cost. This is the point, no? We need to try to introduce, I know this is a little bit tricky, but we need to introduce incentives for SMEs, and if you want that they prepare a very good report to help to develop this sustainable economy in the European Union. I know that this is difficult when I am speaking about the incentive, because we have different point of view. One means incentives, what are you saying? For example, if you prepare a very good information from SME, why not to introduce point in the specific tender, in the public tender, not only the price? This is another question, important question, that if you want to get involved the SMEs, perhaps we should spend time in this thought.
Okay, but maybe then let's turn again more to the user side and the business partners module, which is supposed to replace the existing questionnaires and make sure that all the information is provided to the corporates and the banks, and maybe also fulfill the SFDR, principal adverse indicators and all that. So maybe I start with Cristina, is that okay? Yeah. And then Etienne, what do you think?
So considering the ERS actually request towards large corporation, we need to engage with all our value chain in order to assess which are our impacts and risks and opportunities inside the value chain. As such, I have to admit the value chain disclosure is for sure one of the most challenging aspects of the standard, and it didn't surprise me the result of the previous poll question, where it came out clearly that it's one of the topics that keeps us up at night. So I think that the same questionnaire needs to satisfy the request for both lenders and corporates. We need to avoid absolutely the proliferation of different questionnaires, because otherwise we will start from an alphabet soup of not binding standard to an alphabet soup of binding standard, and that's where we do not want to go also as corporates. So I really think that we need to avoid different questionnaires. We need to focus on consistency of the information, on the comparability. So now that the standards are out, we need to work on the methodology to make sure that both small companies, large company in the same sector use the same methodology. And that's something that in the past we cannot say we have done it properly. So it's a very big challenge ahead. And so the same, this questionnaire that we have seen in both the modules at least covers all the topics that also large corporations need to disclose. So there is a good alignment. So I think that could satisfy the need for corporates for information. And I want to conclude this message saying that it's really important to work on interoperability of everything, not only in Europe, not only, but worldwide, because we really need to focus and avoid burdens, not only on SMEs, but also on large companies, and focus the energy, as Véronique said before, on actually doing sustainability and then reporting.
Etienne?
Yeah. First on interoperability, and I know that Patrick de Cambourg, who is here, has worked a lot with his counterpart from IASB, Emmanuel Ferber, on that, and this is a key topic for him and for all of us. So I'm confident on the fact that here we will end up at a proper place. Then on other aspects, it is true that banks, when they engage with their clients, they will ask for a lot of data points. And if I looking at current questionnaires and I compare it with this business partner module, it accounts for approximately 50% of what we would like to have. So that means that we as banks have to lessen our expectations. And we have really to say it. This, for instance, my teams would be delighted if every SME would fulfill a Scope 3 measurement. Well, perhaps not at first. Perhaps not begin with Scope 3, which, if I take it for a bank, is a nightmare. So, and we are not completely aligned within banks how to measure it. So perhaps not ask SMEs to begin with that. So that's why we on our side, we have to rethink what is the level of granularity and the level of information we ask each SME. And perhaps we could use more proxies to have for the purpose of our own reportings. And perhaps some, but really marginal for sectors who are very CO2 intensive, for instance, a bit more data point. But we have to make a good equilibrium between the two, because if not, I'm pretty sure that this number 3 module, business partner module, will not fulfill its aim.
But you say at the moment it's 50% of what your questionnaires typically ask.
In France, we can have quite a good look at it, because we have worked with Banque de France, you know, our central bank, which has launched an exercise to build up in a specific area, which is climate, a questionnaire and then a score. For every SME in France, 300,000 SME corporates in France, whereas CSRD corporates is 6,000, so a lot of corporates. And here, when I look at what they are in their questionnaires and what is in the current standard, there is a lot in the Banque de France questionnaire. So we have to make sure that perhaps we lessen a bit what we ask first, and so perhaps we increase, but just marginally, the ESRS questionnaires, and so the 50% goes more towards 75–80%, so it will be very marginal what banks are asking on a bilateral basis.
I don't know, Véronique, you want to add something to the 50 and 100%?
Perfection doesn't exist.
Oh.
Okay, very good.
And another word is better is done than perfect.
Voilà.
Yes.
But I think, I mean, already having you stating that you might have to assess whether expectations have to be reviewed, I think that's already a positive signal as well. So.
No, and really, we have done a lot of testings with SMEs, and it has done a lot of interesting feedback and insights on what kind of things is really useful, and what are the things that are useful only for our reporting, and all the things that are only for our reporting, we must crush it.
Yeah.
Here it's difficult. It's not what is written in my brief. In my brief, it's written, you should ask for that. It's very important. No.
This is the interesting part of the panel where everyone goes off script.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. No, but really, I'm completely convinced of the fact that what will be the key success factor is that SMEs are eager to engage on the fact, not on the fact that banks say, if I don't have this reporting, I will stop the financing. Yeah. As mentioned, for me, it's easy to decarbonate my balance sheet. I just stop working with any. It's not how transition, and I don't take any, it's what some NGOs are asking me to do that. And I'm sure that it won't give any kilogram of CO2 in the atmosphere. What will help is the transition of any. What will help is the transition of SMEs, not the fact that
the transition of the entire
I suspend financing X or Y.
So in fact, if I can
yes,
pick
please,
up on that,
please.
and actually anticipate your next question about the role of large corporation, I think to reach our carbon neutrality target, we need to foster a widespread awareness of a sustainable business model. And for that, large corporations can play a big role, with also, of course, with a lot of other actors, in involving the supply chain and their value chain in this task. For that, Eni has actually started a lot of tools, from financing tool, from training tools to communication tools toward the suppliers. But I want to point out a tool that is very specific, that we created as a founding partner in 2021 with Boston Consulting Group and Google Cloud. It's a platform that aims to create an alliances between companies and industry, and it's not open only to partners of Eni, so my company, but the partners of the entire companies that come aboard this platform. In fact, since 2021, we reach now around 15,000 companies that are on board. And these companies are from more than 90 countries, from 60 different sectors. So it's a systemic alliance. And what's the objective of this platform? This platform is open, as I said, for suppliers, for clients, for companies that want to engage with the entire value chain towards a sustainable business model. And to do that, it offers a gradual approach. For small, medium enterprises, it offers the possibility to monitor their ESG journey in times, to have training conferences, to have also a community to share experiences, to understand where there can be a new business opportunities. And so in order for them to understand where can be also the threats in this transformation process that large corporations are now undergoing. So for the SMEs, it offers this service. For large corporations, it offers the possibility to exchange information and to monitor their targets along their value chain. Eni, as one of the partners, for example, is in this platform, has around 30% of their suppliers already part of this platform, so we can monitor how they are moving towards their sustainability journey. And of course, this will help us in order to respond to the ESRS standards. Let's talk about metrics, because here we are talking about standards. This platform at the beginning in 2021 was based on the World Economic Forum metrics. Why? Because we needed a limited set of metrics that could be applied to all the sector, and they were the only set of limited metrics that we could find that were recognized by different industries. Now, of course, the partners of this platform have decided to shift towards the SRS standard, and the small medium enterprise standard will be the light module for small medium enterprise. And of course, next year, we will start a field test to understand how this standard can really satisfy our request of information from the value chain. And then we will be able to better assess how much we will cover in terms of the information we need. And of course, we need to wait also for the sector standard to understand if there are other information that we need.
Is this voluntary?
It's yes, of course, but actually each partner, so Eni as a partner, try to engage with all the main suppliers and has the objective to ask all the suppliers, so the main suppliers, to be on board of this platform.
The question is the SMEs, have they this data, the
yes.
request, because
it's
if
free of charge.
Okay, it's free. The question is that we have a lot of questionnaire. The SMEs is crazy.
Yeah.
At the end, the SMSP, they will have in their table 3 or 4 questionnaires. For the reason, it's very important to reduce the questionnaire. If you have this information in other questionnaire, don't request again for SMEs. It's impossible to get on board to SMEs in this new process. This is my...
Yeah, but that's the point of this platform, because it's not any platform, it's a platform open to different partners. Now also some banks are starting to joining the platform, and so we all ask the same questionnaire and we monitor all the data, so it helps also to develop consistency of the information that is shared.
Okay, I'm still going to ask all of you to basically identify your main takeaways or key messages or things that you haven't been able to say so far. But before we do that, I've been asked to also ask a polling question to the audience, which I think you can reply to on the Slido app. So if you take out your phones. And I think the question is, in your opinion, for an SME, which are the most relevant implementation challenges / difficulties when they need to disclose their sustainability information in compliance with a standard? And the possible answers are lack of supporting tools, training needs and resources scarcity, lack of concrete benefits, hopefully not, complexity of sustainability reporting standards, in brackets, language barriers. So I let everyone reply to this. We can only see the first answer here because the rest is covered by the EFRAG logo. So no, is it the same up there?
On the screen.
Same on the screen. So
Seems to be impressive in even if
The answer is
massive.
doesn't leave any doubt.
Not a surprise.
so if I understand this correctly, by far the most important or biggest problem is training needs and resource scarcity. Is that correct? Do I understand? Because there is, now we see the rest. Great, thank you. Complexity of reporting standards. Okay, that goes back to EFRAG. Lack of supporting tools. Okay, well, thank you very much for replying to the question. So maybe I'll give you the opportunity to say a final word, or maybe react also to the result of this poll. So let's start with Salvador over there.
No, about the training, of course, I agree about the training and resources scarcity, no? But I will highlight that I will encourage the use of the voluntary standard for unlisted SME as soon as possible. This is the first point. And the second point, I can speak from the point of view of European Federation. European Federation has already taken a step to build the capacity that Veronica said of SMEs to help SMEs with sustainability reporting. We have developed with the collaboration of all our professional accounting organization members how to guidance to provide this on how SMEs can get themselves ready to offer sustainability services, including reporting and assurance. And we will continue in this way to help to provide tools, to provide guides, to offer guides a tool to introduce indeed new culture of all SMEs around the Euros. I am positive, I am optimistic, sorry for that. I am positive, I am optimistic about this new culture because I think that we are doing a very good job and in the future we will see the results. Now, of course, we are creating always is more difficult than destroyed, no? When you are creating, always you will have a lot of input gains about this, but in the future we will see, okay, we did well. This is my point, and we will continue in this way.
Cristina?
So to conclude, I believe that small, medium enterprise standards are very important, both for large corporations in order to better assess the impact, threats, and opportunities in the value chain, but also for small, medium enterprise to start talking the same language altogether. But as a final message, I really say that I really believe, and also in ENI, we believe that engaging with the value chain is very important. That's why we set up these different tools to engage with them. But another completely thing will be to actually collect data from the value chain and report solid, robust data in the annual report that can be audited and be published. So I really think that a field test is required not only for SME standard, but also for the large corporation, and also to understand if the bank system is happy for what we report, and then address altogether what can be improved in terms of feasible requests for all the type of companies, in terms of comparability and interoperability over the standards. Because as the pull-out questionnaire came out, like the very difficult language is also a problem, can be a problem also for large corporations, not only for small, medium enterprises.
Etienne?
Yeah, perhaps I will conclude with your very interesting poll question, because I wouldn't have expected 75% on resource scarcity and the training needs. So I'm sure that resource scarcity won't end. That is that if you are today a data scientist specialized in sustainable finance, in 2 minutes you have 10 offers. So we won't have to count on the fact that we will have those resources. So we will have to be more devoted to training existing resources than to go for new, already well-formed resources. So to make it clear on the message, that means that if it is to us, business partners, to perform this training, we have to have something as simple as possible, because if not, we need resources that we won't have.
Véronique?
I have 3 points. First one, I think we have to give a clear signal to the market, to reassure the market, especially small companies, that they will not be punished when they are not capable of immediately, and that they clearly get the time. I think that's a very important one. Secondly, ensuring the market acceptance of the standard.
Sure.
And then the last one, and that's also put forward in the poll, awareness raising and training. And then I want to go even a step further with the scarcity of resources, because our SMEs do not employ data scientists. Our SMEs just try to put together a team. Big majority of companies, the average number of employees with companies in Europe is 4. And then you have a choice as a company owner, as an entrepreneur, whether you let that person develop products and perform services, sell products and services, or do reporting. And that's the scarcity of resources that we first are confronted with before we go to the reporting scarcity in resources.
Just one thing, if I say, because I've seen a question coming up on the screen, and they asked me the name of the platform that I was talking about, and the platform is called OpenS, like Open Ecosystem Sustainability, so OpenES.
Okay, thank you. Well, and actually that's a good comment. There were quite a few questions here in the chat, which unfortunately we could not reply to, given that there was so much else to discuss. But maybe there's a way to reply to some of them later on. Well, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you to the panel. And as was announced in the folder of this conference, we have 2 pillars for success, as you know, and it's not only a pillar about sustainability reporting, but also a pillar for financial reporting. And that is why I'm extremely happy to introduce my colleague and EFRAG FRB chair, Wolf Klinz. Well, as Wolf already says, when we were thinking about Jean-Paul Gauzès, he has a long career in the European Parliament, but most people forget that Wolf originally was really coming from industry and even from consulting, where he worked for McKinsey & Company and also worked for the Treuhandanstalt. Wolf, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Commissioner McGuinness underlined this morning that it is important that companies, businesses are successful and profitable, because only then can they assume the responsibility they have towards society at large. Now, in order to steer companies successfully through difficult times, they have to have relevant information, financial information at their disposal. And therefore, the financial reporting is still very, very important. As a matter of fact, these days, we have a number of crises. As you know, inflation has been rocketing these last 2 years. As a result, interest rates have gone up to heights that we hadn't seen in the Eurozone since the beginning. And of course, we have climate-related risk as well, as we have discussed in the preceding sections. And therefore, where is my where's Hans? Where is my tool to move the? Did they steal your tool? You did.
No, I did not. But
Well, then somebody else may have taken it away with.
it's coming up.
It is, all right. Well, otherwise, I talk to you and you don't see the screen. That may even have the benefit that you listen more carefully. So, thank you, Philippe. So, as I said, we are having challenging times right now, and therefore companies do need the appropriate information. Here we go. EFRAG was established in 2001. At the time, the task was more or less a little bit vague to simply sort of integrate the European perceptions, characteristics, and points of view in the international standard setting. This objective and task became quite clear and much more precise when in 2005 the IFRS accounting standards became legally binding in the European Union. Then the task of EFRAG was to make sure that the standards that were coming and had been were being developed by the IASB in London were really fit for purpose in the European Union after critical checks through EFRAG. So we do this work of trying to sort of work for making sure that the standards are fit for use in Europe in 3 ways. We do some proactive work, you see it on the right-hand side, some proactive work. In other words, we develop our own ideas, ask questions that we consider important, and make proposals that we feed into the work plan of IASB. Secondly, we react to what the IASB is coming forward with, be it in new standards, be it in amendment standards. And thirdly, we help and counsel the European Commission in the endorsement process. I will talk about these 3 things now in turn, but before I do so, I want to underline that we do try as much as we possibly can to do our work in such a way that we are transparent, that we are being viewed as being objective, that we do it with a solid governance and a very good due process. Here we go. No power. Oh, here we go. I have to push harder. Anyhow, so I go now through the 3 types of work that I've just outlined. The first is the proactive research activities. As I said, you know, we develop our own ideas, and that these ideas come from all sorts of sources. They come from board members, they come from the technical expert group, they come from outside, from our constituents, etc. Then we look at them, we try to formulate the questions in a rather precise way, and then once we have the approval by the EFRAG board, EFRAG Financial Reporting Board now, with the input of EFRAG, of the Technical Expert Group, we then can develop and publish a discussion paper that we issue for public consultation. And on the basis of that, we then come to concrete recommendations that we put forward to the IASB in London and say, look, here we have some ideas, our constituents think this is important, why don't you integrate this into your work plan? And quite often, not necessarily 100%, but very, very often, they do integrate these into the work plan, and then we can be sure that our ideas are being seriously considered and eventually may end up in either a new standard or in an amendment of an existing standard. I have here on the right-hand side 3 examples of the result of our proactive work: connectivity, statement of cash flows, and intangible assets. Now, I can be rather brief when it comes to connectivity because the next program point will be devoted entirely to connectivity, and there will be not just an introductory presentation, but also a panel discussion on this. Let me just say this. The connectivity project has been viewed as to be one of the most important ones last year when we developed our work plan. It consists of two parts. The first part will be finished by the end of next year. The second part, 1 year later, probably. And the project aims to connect sustainability reporting information to financial reporting information prepared under the existing conceptual framework. That's the first part. And the second phase would be, it would aim to consider changes needed to the existing conceptual framework of financial reporting so as to achieve integration in reporting whereby most, if not all, but say most, of the sustainability reporting information is directly connected to the financial information, reporting information. And then at the end of the project, of course, we will publish a discussion paper and seek the feedback from constituents, users, preparers, businesses, academics, and the like. The next project here is a statement of cash flows. Now, this is something that the IASB is going to start on as a project within the not too distant future. I cannot give you the exact date, but not too distant future means probably during next year, maybe even in the first half of next year. We are working on this project to really provide input to the IASB, because we do know that the IASB also has an interest in this project. And we are trying to collect input on what people consider to be the objective of the statement of cash flows, how it is currently being used, and what the issues are, how the statement is being prepared right now, and what should be changed. And the third point is intangible assets. Now, in my definition, intangible assets are kind of immaterial resources that are either linked to the business model of a company or to the value creation chain. And we that is EFRAG, already published a discussion paper some 2 years ago, and we did get some feedback on it. And on that basis, we then developed 10 recommendations that we informed the IASB of. These recommendations will be, I'm sure, considered by the IASB, not necessarily taken on board one by one, but they will be proved to be a solid basis for the work that the IASB will do. The IASB already has informed us that they will take this project on. It's part of the work plan. Now, it's not coming as quickly as the other projects that I just mentioned. They say it's probably in 2 years' time. But whatever the timing is, it's important that here again, we have a project that we consider to be important, that we developed some ideas on, had a discussion paper, got some feedback, and then fed it into the work of the IASB, and they are happy to take this project on. Now we come to the second way we work, and that is, I push hard, yeah, it does work. There's the reactive activities. In other words, we react to standards or amended standards that the IASB publishes. And you see here, IASB on the left-hand side issues a proposal for a standard. We have a public consultation. We then develop our own ideas. We develop a preferred view. And then EFRAG publishes comments to the proposal. We have normally, is a several-step approach. We have draft comment letter, then we have a final comment letter, and eventually the IASB has enough information to really issue the standard or the amendment to an existing standard. And I have here 2 examples on the right-hand side that I want to briefly touch on. One is the primary financial statements, and the other one is subsidiaries without public accountability. Now, primary financial statements, this is a new IFRS standard, and it will improve, so we hope, the communication in the financial statement with a particular focus on the performance in the statement of profit and loss. And when it comes to the subsidiaries, this new IFRS standard will, and this is important, decrease the IFRS, the burden that normally the IFRS requires, the burden of IFRS disclosures for non-listed companies that prepare consolidated financial statements in accordance with IFRS. So therefore, particularly here in Europe, it was clear that many companies that are big entities that consolidate their numbers using IFRS, but that are not forced to do this, so will see a relief. They can reduce the normally required disclosures by IFRS. So, and the last point is the endorsement process. Now that we have a standard or a amended standard, it is important to make this mandatory in the European Union. And as you know, this process is the endorsement process. And it's a step-by-step process. The Commission that, of course, knows what is being worked on by the IASB, by us, and by in close cooperation also. The Commission asks us for advice and for a final endorsement letter. So we check, you see it on the lower end left side, whether this standard or amended standard meets the technical criteria. And then, very important, is it really conducive to the European public good? And if it is so, we come out with a draft endorsement letter. We then get some feedback to that one, and eventually we have a final endorsement letter. And on that basis, the European Commission can start the endorsement procedure. And that procedure, of course, also involves the member states. The member states do have a representative in the Accounting Regulatory Committee, in the ARC, and then eventually this standard is being approved and becomes legally binding. And here I have two examples, the supplier finance arrangement, and then on the lower end, the amendments to income taxes. The supplier finance arrangement has to do with a situation where a company uses a finance provider to pay its trade payables, and then pays the finance provider later on. So it gains some time to settle its debt. That's fair enough. It's increasing, by the way. This way of paying its bills is becoming quite popular. The problem is that the users and business partners of that company do not necessarily know that this company is using a finance supplier, and so it is important that the information about the situation is better, so that the user can judge or assess, is there a risk? Is there a risk of debt sustainability? Is there a risk of liquidity, etc.? So this is this project. And the last one is one that also the Commissioner mentioned this morning. You may recall that the OECD countries, I think it was last year, in a meeting agreed to make sure that all companies do pay at least a minimum of 15% taxes. They wanted to avoid that internationally active companies shift profits from one country to the other to minimize taxes and even sort of move the profits into tax havens and don't pay any taxes. So they agreed 15%. And that amendment was, I think, unanimously approved. That decision was unanimously taken. And in order to now enact it properly, we had the problem with deferred taxes, because the time was and is not long enough to really assess properly what is the impact on deferred taxes if we introduce this new regime. And therefore, the IASB finally came forward with a recommendation to exempt entities for the time being from recognizing deferred taxes. This is not for all times. Of course, in a few years' time, of course, there will be a solution to this situation of deferred taxes, but for the time being it is. We had, since time was so short, we had to work extremely fast, and believe it or not, within 10 days, we did complete the amendments, the complete publication that was necessary to endorse this new standard. So I think, and the Commissioner, by the way, mentioned this morning, so I think that was quite an achievement. Thank you very much, so much as introduction, and now I'm looking forward to the next speaker that is from IASB, as a matter of fact. Yes. You will call him.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker will be provided through a Teams connection, and is the Linda Mezon-Hutter, is the IASB Vice Chair. She joined the IASB on the 12th of September 2022 for a 5-year period. Before that, she was the Chair of the Accounting Standards Board in Canada. So please welcome Mrs. Mezon-Hutter for the next keynote speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm hoping you can hear me okay, and I'm hoping that eventually my slides will appear. There they are. So thank you for allowing me to join you today through the wonders of technology. I actually am joining you from Canada, and we're here in Canada. We're in the midst of what appears to be our first storm of the winter season, so you have to travel there. I certainly am hoping you have better weather than I'm having right now, because I think I'm going to be inside most of the day today. So if we could just flip to the next slide, please. I was really happy to listen to Wolf and see that he covered off our main projects, because that's not what I'm going to talk to you about today. I have the luxury of talking to you about something a little bit differently, and I'm going to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about history, which as a student I really enjoyed. And a lot of times I get the question, do you think financial reporting is still relevant today? So that's really what started my thought process as I thought about what I was going to talk to you about today. But, it's hard to think about the state of play today without thinking about the past, where we've come from. And what's interesting, financial reporting has a long legacy. And this year, our organization recognized 50 years of international cooperation, which started with the formation of the IASC in 1973. And that was the forerunner of the IASB. And their goal was to focus on trying to remove jurisdictional differences in accounting requirements. Now, this became particularly important as the world recovered from the events of World War II, and through the treaties, we started seeing more cross-border capital flows, and that showcased the difficulties caused by jurisdictional differences. Then in 2000, the IFRS Foundation was formed, and IOSCO recommended the use of IFRS accounting standards. And a mere 2 years later, and to your credit, the EU became the catalyst for other jurisdictions to adopt as well. So at that point, as mentioned, I was in Canada. I joined the Canadian Accounting Standards Board as a volunteer member in 2004, and I ultimately became the chair of that board in 2013. Now, throughout that time, and certainly now that I'm with the IASB, I've been heavily involved in promoting the use of IFRS accounting standards. I also, at the time, led the conversion of my then employer, the Royal Bank of Canada, to adopt IFRS in 2011. And that was having experienced firsthand in the banking sector the impacts of the financial crisis. So using standards within those experiences. So it's particular significance to me to be able to speak with you today about the state of play as I see it of financial reporting to express my beliefs. And my beliefs are as follow: that financial reporting remains the foundation of how we communicate financial results globally. It's the foundation for transparency, accountability, and efficiency in the global capital markets today. And adapting to the events in the environment has been and will continue to be a key responsibility for all of us who participate in efforts to enhance and improve accounting standards. The future of principles-based accounting standards will be pivotal in maintaining the relevance of financial reporting and will be supplemented by sustainability disclosures. And the IASB remains committed to dealing with issues as they emerge. And with IFRS 9 being an example in terms of expected credit losses, but we've also done IFRS 15, 16, and 17, revenue, leases, and insurance, moving forward with significant standards and now working through the post-implementation assessments of those standards, at least IFRS 9 and 15. I think of the traditional financial reporting mechanisms as the foundational or the infrastructure that can be built upon through enhancements, and sustainability being the most obvious one today, but surely other things will follow. The IASB's role is to ensure that the infrastructure stays strong, working within the financial reporting ecosystem with preparers, auditors, security and prudential regulators, and policymakers staying true to that legacy of adapting to the environment with which we are presented. If I could have my next slide, please. So I think it's fair to say that we've certainly had opportunities to test the resilience of the IFRS accounting standards over the past few years. We've seen the concerns over global warming consistently in the media, and overall climate challenges are becoming a more prominent part of virtually all conversations between our respective governmental representatives. And of course, most recently, COVID-19 was a key test in examining the use of and the relevance of financial reporting in a very unique environment. Where there were questions, the IASB and other standard setters responded with guidance. Going concern, valuation, impairment, lease concessions, government grants, all were examples. Now, some would have preferred a lot more guidance, of course, and I understand that because in this situation, I think people really wanted us to do this, but we tried to stay true to the principles-based nature. And I say this as we standard setters, and I still speak of the time was when I was in Canada as the chair of the board in Canada, we tried to stay true to the principles-based nature and give additional guidance within those principles. I think the pandemic showed us where we were strong, but it also showed us where we could be stronger. And we learned a lot from the pandemic experiences. The pandemic made us more aware of the potential fragility of our world and also how certain forces absolutely transcend borders, and hence the importance and relevance of the development of sustainability-related disclosures. If those invisible organisms that brought such sickness and death globally are not bounded by borders, then obviously the climate-related forces equally transcend borders and reporting jurisdictions, and the need to adapt to that reality is with us today as we meet. Hence our need on the accounting standards side to work together with others to ensure robust reporting of sustainability disclosures in a way that continues the enhancement of global cooperation, as surely as other disruptors will occur in the future. Digitalization will certainly accelerate the speedy sharing of all of this information as more and more information becomes available. And we will need to continue monitoring the relevance of reporting that comes as a result of our combined standards under increasing levels of uncertainty and complexity. And if I could please have my last slide. The specific project I want to showcase, as Wolf did an excellent job of showcasing other projects, but the one that I want to showcase is our project on climate and other uncertainties project. There's a strong relationship between the traditional financial information and the sustainability-related financial disclosures. We broadened the scope of this project as we moved it to standard setting to ensure that our thinking reflects the future development in the area of sustainability matters generally, and how the thinking about all relevant risk is consistent with other assumptions used in developing the financial statements. So our thinking will move beyond climate-related risk as originally envisioned. But we do realize that probably climate-related risks are the best way to begin. as the incontrovertible evidence is obvious for all to see that change must happen, and that change will inevitably affect business models. So the products that we accept today may become unacceptable in a new, more sustainable world. New products that are environmentally sustainable will be developed. This will cause discontinuance of product lines. It could result in impairment. It could result in capital costs for new production lines and new expenses for new ways of marketing and selling these products. There will be valuation issues arising as companies adapt their strategies and the capital markets adjust to new strategies. This is just another example of how the financial reporting environment continues to adapt to environmental forces, and a key example of why the Foundation formed the IASB and how the IASB and ISSB will continue to work together closely, just as the ISSB and the IASB work together with EFRAG and others who play similar roles globally. So please stay tuned and continue to let us hear from you, as we will need your participation in our projects to keep us relevant. And I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to announce our third keynote speaker for this afternoon, and that is Verena Ross from the ESMA chair of the European Securities and Markets Authority, a role which she took already up on the 1st of November 2021, and she is responsible not only for representing the authority, but also for preparing the work and chairing its board of supervisors and management board. And as the commissioner said already this morning, we go from standards into implementation, into digitalization, and there is a part of enforcement that has its role to play. Verena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much to Hans for the invitation to speak here today, but also I'm very glad to speak next to Wolf and Patrick here being in front of me as well. It's always a pleasure to be here. I was with you a year ago for the 21st anniversary of EFRAG's establishment. And already then I talked a bit about this issue of connectivity, and I would like to come back to that also. As Wolf had rightly said, the connectivity between financial and sustainability reporting is clearly a topic that is very important, that will be touched on in the panel just after my speech. And what I thought would be useful is to reflect a bit what we've done on the implementation front and looking at how to do this in practice and what we are planning to do over the next few months going forward. But before I get into that, allow me a very short digression to talk about the title of the next session, Building Bridges. And throughout my career, first in central banking and then in financial supervision, I've experienced that cooperation has always been key to identify a workable solution to shared problems, especially during challenging times. And I think it's fair to say that these are, again, very challenging times if we look at the dual transition that we are facing in terms of digital and sustainable economy. So for us, what is important is that we continue to work in a cooperative way and finding cross-sectorial solutions to the issues that we are facing. As a first element to support connectivity and corporate reporting, in my view, what is important is that we look at the human and organizational infrastructure that stands behind the publicly reported disclosures. In our recently published European Common Enforcement Priorities, we've pointed to the relevance of this human and organizational element, not only to adequately prepare for the application of the new European Sustainability Reporting Standards, but also to build the necessary consistency between the sustainability statement and the financial statements. With the entry into force of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, sustainability reporting requirements were finally integrated into the mainstream reporting of a large group of companies. In other words, there's no longer an assumed primacy of financial reporting over sustainability reporting. These two pillars now are basically in a continuum which have to tell a consistent story. This has implications for the way in which various actors that look at sustainability reporting in comparison to and in combination with financial reporting. It also means two communities of professionals, the sustainability and the financial reporting experts, are now required to sit together, not only to combine their respective reports, but to prepare what are two components of the same report. These groups of professionals will work together to develop a common control environment for the entire annual financial report. Internal control experience, expertise, and organizational capacity will need to also, therefore, entail sustainability alongside the more traditional financial reporting skills. And that also reflects the responsibility of the management and the supervisory bodies that will have to look again at these two aspects together. Connectivity should also help bridge the time disconnect between sustainability information, which by its nature is typically forward-looking, and financial reporting that is more traditionally backward-looking. There are a number of practical aspects to promote connectivity that include, first of all, the adoption of the same terminology and concepts. Secondly, the reliance on cross-referencing to signpost connected information. And thirdly, the use of digital tools to really help investors that are, as Linda says, very much at the center of all of this, to promptly retrieve the relevant connections between the two. In this year's enforcement priorities, in particular, we have further emphasized as ESMA the fact that a consistent treatment of climate-related matters across the annual financial report is essential to mitigate the risk of greenwashing. Transparency on the assumptions made to incorporate different sustainability scenarios into the estimate of expected future cash flow, and ensuring the consistency with more strategic ESG commitments of an issuer is critical to preserve investors' confidence as well as the credibility of our overall sustainability journey. While consistency between financial and sustainability reporting is an essential feature of connectivity, investors can only benefit from complementarity of these two reporting pillars when the financial statements provide explanations of cases in which this consistency has not been able to be achieved, and the reasons why it has not been able to be achieved. In this year's enforcement priorities, we have also recommended that issuers include such information inside the financial statements. Given the importance of promoting consistency and more generally connectivity between financial and sustainability reporting, last October we published for the first time a report on the disclosures of climate-related matters in the financial statements, which I would certainly encourage you all to have a look at, as it provides more than 20 disclosure examples from the 2022 financial statements of some European issuers. And I think it really gives a good example of what the picture looks like at this point in time. Before leaving the floor to the distinguished panel that is due to follow, let me spend a few words on what we can do in the future to further support this connectivity journey and the building of bridges. The activities already undertaken by ESMA and national authorities to strengthen the relationship between financial and sustainability reporting in the past years will certainly be continued and further enhanced. Our flagship publication in the corporate reporting area, the annual enforcement priorities, will continue to look at connectivity. I expect that with the entry into application of the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, our recommendations in this area will become even more precise and more specific. Alongside our enforcement priorities, We also regularly publish extracts from the decisions taken by national enforcers in relation to financial reporting. In a recent extract, we have highlighted enforcement decisions about climate risks in financial information. We've particularly stressed the fact that climate risk may become material in the financial statements, not only due to the magnitude of the financial effects, but also due to qualitative aspects. I would also like to stress the good cooperation with EFRAG on the work on connectivity. Our teams are very keen to continue to contribute also to the educational efforts that you are trying to put in place in this regard. Similarly, we will continue to engage with the IFRS Foundation to monitor their ongoing work in this area and alert them to the issues that also we encounter on the ground when it comes to supervision and enforcement. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude. As the 28th UN Climate Change Conference of Parties, the COP28, is about to start, I think we are reminded again of the need to act quickly in this area and support the financial sector in channeling the necessary resources towards sustainable investment in a way that does not destabilize markets and also that preserves the investor trust. This is why, alongside our continued work on greenwashing, for which, by the way, we will publish a further report, particularly on the supervisory efforts countering greenwashing next May, we will continue to work on the interplay between sustainability and financial reporting. We will support national supervisors and national authorities in identifying the red flags with regards to consistency between companies' sustainability ambitions in their public communications and the concrete financial implications of these ambitions. At the same time, with the new ESRS starting from the beginning of next year for the first set of companies, there will be a learning curve for all parties concerned, for the companies, for the market participants, but also for us as supervisors on the ground. This suggests that continued cooperation and dialogue is necessary to successfully overcome the difficulties we will all face in this initial build-up at European level through EFRAG and at national level. I would like to quickly pay tribute here to Jean-Paul Gauzès as well, because he has been so instrumental in building EFRAG to what it is today, and he was a great European in doing that. So I really believe as Europe, he has helped us, but we are generally can be proud of what has been set up in terms of sustainability reporting. Europe is a bit of a forefront runner on all of this. And I think it's important that we also use that to now set an example on the connectivity issue between financial and sustainability reporting. This brings me to the next challenge that lies ahead. Ultimately, the language of connectivity between financial and sustainability reporting can only be as international as the level of global consistency of the respective standards. Here too, the ongoing work of EFRAG on interoperability with the IASB and JRI is absolutely essential. And I know Patrick and others in EFRAG are working hard to try to make that happen on the ground. Again, it's about building bridges. The EU's ability as a sovereign jurisdiction to set its own requirements should not be the excuse to diverge from international initiatives, but rather be the reason to build global acceptance of higher and stronger reporting standards. As David Attenborough reminded us in his opening address as a People's Advocate at the COP26 in Glasgow, if working apart, we have force powerful enough to destabilize our planet, surely working together, we're powerful enough to save it. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we move to the panel, it is first coffee time. So I would like to have a coffee time until 10 past. So we will be moving a little bit more into the time zone that we need to follow up. Thank you very much, and see you within 25 minutes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the last part of the day, and somebody told me, no, it's not true, it's not the last part, because the reception is the last part. So that's true. We are going to continue specifically on the connectivity and building bridges, and therefore, again, we will have a speaker first, and then after that, the moderator will introduce the panel. The speaker for this part is Sébastien Harushimana, and Sébastien is the EFRAG Financial Reporting Tech Chair, and he has extensive technical expertise gained over 25 years in international accounting, mainly IFRS, but also US GAAP, IPSS, and other local GAAPs as well. He has been working as an executive director for PwC in Belgium, and I would gladly give him the floor. Sébastien, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hans. Good afternoon, everyone. The need for bridges as sustainability reporting has been put on equal footing to financial reporting through regulation, as highlighted this morning by Excellency Commissioner Maureen McGuinness. Many European stakeholders have wondered how information reported under sustainability reporting is to be compared to information reported under financial reporting. In particular, some stakeholders are surprised when none of the net zero transition commitments made by entities are reflected on the statement of financial position. Similarly, certain clearly identified and quantified long-term risks in the sustainability reporting have not yet made their way in the financial statements. In fact, what appears to be a contradiction between the two reporting frameworks may find its explanation in the fact that sustainability and financial reporting are used for different purposes. This said, there is a need for investors and other users of financial statements and sustainability reporting to understand how and to what extent information reported under sustainability reporting has been reflected in the financial reporting. If you can move the... To this end, EFRAG has set up a connectivity research project that will support the building of bridges between sustainability and financial reporting. During the project, thought leadership and education material, including practical examples, will be published. The final deliverable will be published in the form of a discussion paper, as highlighted by Wolf Klinz this afternoon, that's part of our deliverable of the proactive research projects, which this discussion paper then will be available for the IASB and other standard setters to get some inspiration from. If we go to next. Now, the overview of our research project is actually split in two phases. We have phase one. Under this phase, as already explained by Wolf Klinz, EFRAG experts will study how and to what extent information reported in sustainability reporting aligns with corresponding information in financial reporting within the constraints of existing conceptual frameworks. Direct connectivity, where quantitative data points, also known as anchor points, reported under sustainability reporting, when they can be matched to corresponding quantitative amounts in the financial reporting, they will be cross-referenced. Indirect connectivity, where quantitative data points reported under sustainability reporting cannot be exactly matched to corresponding quantitative amounts in the financial reporting, will be reconciled. Consistency or lack thereof, of data and assumptions used in both sustainability and financial reporting will be explained. Now, we expect, as Wolf Klinz explained, phase 1 to be completed in 2024, but this I'm talking under the control of our distinguished experts who are helping us to lead this project. Now, we then have phase 2. Once EFRAG experts have distinguished information that can be connected from information that cannot be connected under existing conceptual frameworks, so they will explore what needs to change, if any, in the existing conceptual framework in the financial reporting so that total or near total alignment of information reported under both reporting frameworks. In other words, phase 2 will explore the possibility of integration in reporting, and EFRAG experts will consider outcomes from the IASB projects. We heard this afternoon from Linda that the IASB is working on climate-related risks and other uncertainties. EFRAG experts will also consider the ongoing the work from IASB in order to inform the direction of their phase 2. As to the timing, given that we would be dependent on outcome from other works from other organizations, we have not yet set up the timing for phase 2, and that will be dependent upon the distinguished experts and how they will move forward. The scope of sustainability reporting will be based on ASRS, but also IASB standards will be taken into account, whilst the scope for financial reporting will be based on IFRS requirements. But first, from this afternoon, we've been talking about connectivity. The question is, what do we understand by connectivity anyway? Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I invite you to listen to our panel of experts who hopefully will enlighten us to what connectivity is all about. Thank you very much.
And let me briefly introduce the panel coordinator, Jens Berger, who is our EFRAG Financial Reporting Tech Vice Chair, but also acted as acting chair when Sebastian was not there yet. Jens is a partner responsible for quality on corporate reporting matters at Deloitte in Germany, and he's also head of the IFRS and Corporate Reporting Center of Excellence, as well as a member of Deloitte's Global Leadership on Corporate Reporting. Jens, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hans. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we dive into the wonderful world of connectivity, let me introduce the panel first. I'll start with the gentleman to the farthest right of myself, Leo van der Tast. Leo is probably known to many of you, but Leo is, at this point in time, a full professor at the University of Tilburg, and he recently retired as the corporate reporting leader globally for EY, and is still a senior advisor to them. So welcome, Leo. Then we have Sirku Palmuaru. She is a senior advisor at the climate responsibility expertise company Nordic Offset. She has also a IFRS past, but more recently a sustainability reporting focus. And she has been involved both with the Big Four company, but also in public services, and also has been involved with ESMA. So welcome, Sirku. And then we have Kirsten Hovey. Kirsten is a senior advisor at Norsk Hydro and also a vice president, and she's advising the CFO of the company. She has been involved in Norsk Hydro's ESG reporting from 2004 until 2022, so for quite some time. So from a preparer's perspective, she has a lot of experience and probably more experience about sustainability reporting than many others. Thank you for being here today. And finally, it's a pleasure also to introduce Karsten. Karsten is one of those people who are actually using the reports we produce and discuss all the time and set standards for us. So Karsten is has been around for quite some while in the standard setting area, both or at EFRAG, at the IASB, but also at the German standard setter. He holds a PhD in insurance economics, used to be an insurance analyst in various banks and investment banks, and is also a member of supervisory and advisory boards currently. So with that, welcome to this panel. And let me briefly introduce the topic we are setting the scene a bit. We have called this panel Building Bridges. And I think you should keep that picture in mind a bit, because building bridges is not only about the topics and the information data points, it's also about how we interact with those people more focused on sustainability reporting, but also financial reporting. I think this is very important. The other thing is a good bridge needs pillars, at a minimum 2. And this is what we also see in our structure here at EFRAG, but also at the IASB and the IFRS Foundation. So, and the question is, do we have a suspension bridge, or do we have a 6-track concrete bridge going forward? And I think this is what we're aiming at, the big solid concrete bridge that lasts ages versus our little tiny wooden bridge that might, break through if too many people go across it. Everyone's talking connectivity these days, and I think this is the challenge because people have different expectation around connectivity. And I think this brings me to my first question to you. What does connectivity mean to you? And I think this will already show, the potentially diverse views, but also the common ground. So I think we'll start with Kirsten, and then we continue with Kirsten. But Kirsten, please.
Thank you, Jens. To me, connectivity is about telling the complete story, including, starting with risk, strategy, operational performance, the impact on the external environment as well as on society, and then, of course, the financial consequences to the company. But I don't think it's possible to tell that story in one go in an annual report. That would have resulted in lots of duplication throughout the report. But it's possible to do it still with good references across the report, as this could include information connected to several ESRSs as well as to the financial statements. And in my opinion, and I think that most of you would agree to that, is that nothing is less convincing than when you have a glossy ESG strategy that is not connected with the business strategy, and then I would say business strategy in quotation marks. As long as the ESG strategy is not an integrated part of the business strategy, you have a real challenge to understand your main risks. Thank you.
Thank you. Carsten.
Yeah, Kirsten is trying to tell a story. We try to understand the story. And for me, understanding the financial impact of all the information we suddenly get out of the sustainability part is actually making the bridge to what connectivity is about. So taking into account the effect of climate change, the use and the protection of natural resources, and the respect of human rights. And if you suddenly have these new factors, you've got a lot of information around that, and you take this into account. As I used to be an equity analyst, you have to adjust your capital costs, your expected capital costs, to that entity to come to a valuation. And I think this is going to be a really challenging work going for the future, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Sirku.
Okay, thank you. And maybe first, because I have a enforcement background, then it's the enforcement perspective first. So for me, connectivity means more transparency. It means a possibility for the investors and also other users of the reporting to get a clearer and more comprehensive picture of, for example, when we take climate targets, we take transition plans, what are their financial impacts also, not only now, but also in the future for many years forward. So this is the clearer picture, more comprehensive picture. And as we all know, and we have what has already been mentioned today, consistency is already required now based on the Transparency Directive. I think for me, connectivity is kind of the next level to this transparency, comparability, and also way to reduce possibilities for greenwashing. So to put it in short, and maybe also to Margaret's comment about the strategy. I'm now working with large entities, and for them also it's very clear that the concept of connectivity is a tool also to build up their strategy to be able to transit to more greener business models and strategies. So they have to. It's very important for them also. Thank you.
You.
Yeah, thank you, Jens. It's almost Christmas, so if I have a wish list, I would also echo Kirsten's point about you would ideally see the annual report consisting of the management report, including sustainability reports, as well as financial statements, to be one composite whole. Not just where you find all the information, but where you can also easily navigate and understand the links between those components. So I hope as a panel we can really let's say contribute to that. There's two more points, if you allow me, Jens, with connectivity. One is it's not just the end result, the report, it's also the process. And with process I mean here, for example, at EFRAG, we have the cooperation between the financial reporting pillar and the sustainability reporting panel. You can't just look at the end results, you also have to make sure the process works right. And the final thing is, this is a joint effort. Those of you who looked at the EFRAG outreach report saw that it distinguishes between 4 different sources of lack of connectivity. And what we shouldn't do is sort of start a blaming exercise, like the standards are not right, or there's non-compliance with the standards, or we just can't put our hands about climate impact, or the users don't understand, to Karsten's point, so because they don't understand what the purpose of financial statements is. So this is a joint effort, in my view.
Thank you, Leo. Talking about users, financial reporting and sustainability reporting and connectivity are not a means to an end. It's serving a certain purpose, and we need to make sure that it serves the users of that information. And I think it's important to also put connectivity in context. And so, Karsten, my question to you as the first in line, how can connectivity between financial and sustainability reporting contribute to more informed decision-making for investors and other stakeholders, which is broader now?
Yeah, that's a key challenge today. I mean, today you distinguish already between sustainable investments and now what I was told, the so-called real return investments, which do not take into account sustainable impacts. But from a natural point of view, I would say that the sustainable investments will face a higher demand than the dirty investments. And this has an effect then on the performance of the assets and on the implicit capital costs. So therefore, it's essential to understand the story right from the beginning in order to get the right assessment also afterwards. But it's a long way. I mean, what we've seen is suddenly one of the biggest rating agencies which do abandon their ESG rating because they do not want to go this way anymore. They may face incoherences between the financial assessment and the sustainability assessment, so they rather retreat from it. But I think it's an integral part which we'll see. So in my view, we will not have any more, well, in the 5 years to come, distinguished ESG analysts and equity analysts, but it has to become an integral part of it. And the connectivity with all the reporting initiatives, especially the ESRS, which imposes to put all this information in the management report, is making the path to this.
Thank you. So you see the recent pushback on this issue more a stumbling stone than a trend. Is that right? Kirsten, you have been dealing for many years with questions on your ESG reports. So maybe from your experience, how can connectivity contribute to a better understanding of the financial of the information of a company?
in my opinion, ESG is, from the business perspective, ultimately about risk management. I wouldn't say good example, but a material example on that could be the blast of the 30,000 years old Juukan Gorge cultural heritage in Australia by Rio Tinto in 2020. That made the CEO have to go, the chairperson and several others had to go. Or going to the other part of the world, to Brazil, where we had the São Marco and the Brumadinho disasters in 2015 and 2019. They had certainly significant consequences to their respective companies, but not only to the respective companies, but to the whole industry globally. For the Juukan Gorge, that was later said that it was partly due to poor reporting structure, which is absolutely relevant for this discussion, even though that was the internal part of the reporting structure. But a bad internal reporting structure will also, of course, result in a bad external reporting structure. For the São Marco and Brumadinho disasters, it has resulted in the establishment of the so-called GISTM standard, the Global Industry Tailings Management Standard, which has consequences for the complete mining industry. The good part of it is, of course, that, well, we will report a lot more externally. We have started that already. But the main part of it is, of course, that tailings management will be safer going forward, to the benefit of the communities, to the environment, and not least also to the businesses in question. I would not dare to claim that any of these disasters would not have happened with even the best, or could not have happened with even the best reporting standards. But I have experienced the benefits of good transparency when the disaster hits, because sooner or later a serious incident will hit any company of a size.
Thank you, Kirsten. Our topic today, our theme today is building bridges. And one of the questions when we started discussing connectivity is how to deal with the overlaps as a result of building two parallel systems, if you wanted. What we try to do is make a coherent theme out of these parallel systems. There's two ways of dealing with the overlaps: not deal with them at all and have financial reporting standalone and separate sustainability reporting standalone, or is a way, for example, to use cross-references. And if you prefer cross-referencing, which direction do you prefer? Do you prefer the cross-reference to sit in the sustainability report or in the financial report? And maybe Leo, you want to go first? This one. Leo.
Leo, sorry.
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think the parallel to bridges is a good one, because it's almost like a construction of a bridge between two parts of two banks of the same river. We currently already have, let's say, disclosures in the sustainability report. So the ESRSs, for example, require you, as Sebastian said, to link the emissions to a revenue, to get to the emission per euro of revenue, where it explicitly links to what you already have in the financial statements. On the other hand, we already have in the financial statements situations where references are made to the sustainability report. I mean, you would expect if something is material and mentioned in the sustainability report, that at least there is some mentioning of that in the financial statements. You mentioned cross-referencing. The term cross-referencing under IFRS has a specific meaning, so I'm a bit nervous of, I want to make sure you understand, because if in the financial statements you cross-reference to the management report, or including the sustainability report, that means that that part that you're referencing to now becomes part of the financial statements, with all the legal and assurance consequences of that. So what we see in practice is that companies are not necessarily cross-referencing to the sustainability part of the management report, but they just summarize what they've said in the management report, and then say, okay, this is how we would summarize our strategy and our plans, and these are the consequences for provisions, for impairments, for our post-balance sheet events, etc. And that actually is I think a good way. So you may not be able to avoid duplication, but as long as the duplication is functional, I think it is very helpful.
Thank you, Leo. Sirku.
Yes, my understanding is, and my opinion is that both reports, they should be kind of complete on a standalone perspective. Two reasons at least is the assurance perspective, of course, and the other second is that they are based on different kind of requirements and you have to comply with the requirements. But not excluding the possibility to use referencing as is instructed, for example, in the ESRS. But I have the same findings. I have heard worries also in Finland with listed entities that why do we have to double present information on both sides? This is too much burden on everything. But actually, being quite in the IFRS reporting and also quite in the ESRS reporting, I haven't yet come to see any certain points where there is direct application of information. So I kind of share the same idea that Leo has, that there could be, because both reports, they serve different purpose. If there is kind of some same information or related information, it serves a different purpose in the separate reports. And there could be kind of same kind of information, same pieces of information, but for a different purpose. And I have also seen this kind of solution that you could, and I think it's good, that you don't duplicate the information. There is no need, for example, your climate targets and your climate plans or your transition plans, but you refer to them in a summarized way when you explain the financial consequences in the financial reporting. So this way, at least for me, I don't see it the big problem for double reporting in the future world, because it's for different purposes and different requirements.
Yeah. Kirsten.
Yeah, and I'm not completely aligned with the two speakers so far.
Very good.
I believe that, well, double reporting is sometimes necessary. That one we can agree to. But from my perspective as a reporter, it should be avoided when possible. It makes lengthy reports. It increases the risk of errors in the report. When you have a topic that has been mentioned several times in the report, and then right before you have to publish, you discover that you have to change something due to, there can be very good reasons for that, and then you should change it consistently throughout the report. That is a high risk of errors, which we don't want in our annual reports. In my opinion, it's better to mention things in the ESG report or describe it in full in the ESG report with reference to the financial report when applicable, or vice versa, depending on where it belongs the most. But then, of course, with a very good way of referencing. An example is site closures that might have consequences to a number of different ESRSs, in addition to the financial statements. Policies, approach, and ongoing projects belongs naturally in the ESG statements when we are talking about how to describe it. While the asset retirement obligations should then, of course, be part of the financial statements as required. And with proper referencing throughout the whole thing, it should be possible for the users of the report to find the information they need and put it in context without excessive double reporting.
Thank you. Carsten?
Well, in an ideal world, you would have templates, right? On the same basis, and then I can compare company A to company B. This is what's happening for the insurance specialists amongst you in the SFCR reporting world. So the regulator has predefined templates, what you have to report, and so I do not care about cross-references, but I just come to a conclusion, can make my benchmarks and see what the outcome is. Annual reports is more complicated. We don't have it. We have a standard, well, not even really a standardized P&L and balance sheet under IFRS, but something like it. In the sustainability report, unfortunately, standards are, for the time being, a little bit vague. So let's see whether best practice in the sector specific standards will deliver such an outcome. But if I have one document where all the information is within the same document, I'm okay with cross-referencing. And today, with the IT tools, it should be possible not to have a printout, but to click in the section and then to be referred to where the information is. But of course, the legal aspect of limited assurance and full assurance, well, that I wasn't aware of, so that might play it against it. Of course, the aim should be an integrated reporting approach. But again, I mean, with templates, standardized, compared, you make the same sort of cross-references and you come to the outcome. That would be the ideal world.
You will get a taxonomy, no worries, but maybe you will also get a primary financial statements project, so at least there's a bit more standardization in the P&L going forward.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully. But thank you very much. Building bridges also means that, you know, each side has to understand each other. And I think a lot of talk, when we discuss with the sustainability reporting pillar, oftentimes is trying to understand each other. And often we say, yes, sustainability reporting needs to learn from the wealth of experience of traditional financial reportings with, I think Linda said, thousands of years, I'd say, that random monk invented double entry account, but anyway, it's enough years of experience. Do you see, after a couple of years of sustainability standard setting and also sustainability reporting becoming more mainstream than it might have been in the past, do you see an evolution how sustainability matters impact financial reporting? That's maybe a question also from his wealth of experience to Leo, if you want to go first.
Yeah, so certainly we've already seen over the past couple of years improvement. I mean, Sigurd, you're going to talk about the ESMA report of 2022 financial statements, and also Verena referred to that. But already before that, so since I think about 2019, when there was a significant increase in activities from NGOs, from lobbying groups, there was a lot of pressure, both on the old profession as well as preparers to step up. And we've seen significant step-ups since. The research I did for the Dutch Institute of Auditors looked at financial statements references to climate, as well as the auditors' reports reference to climate in 2021 already. And we saw a significant uptake from one year to the next. Just to give you an indication, the number of references in the auditor's report to climate risk and what the auditor has done went up from 4% to 70%, simply because of the attention it received and the pressure it received, but also in the financial statements themselves. References to climate risk, even management simply saying we don't see a material impact, but at least we saw that conscious decision to mention it and also explain why they thought it was not material. So yes, we've seen a lot of change already, Jens. I must admit it was mainly on climate. If you look at other areas of sustainability, there is still a significant road to travel.
It's a journey,
yeah,
as usual. Sirke, you have dealt with this from an enforcement perspective and an enforcement angle, so maybe your views on this.
Yes, yes. So as we heard before, climate-related matters and also the consistency between finance and NFI reporting has been an enforcement priority for the European enforcers already, I think, for 3 years. And when we started enforcing this area, the results were quite poor. There was not that much in the financial statements. And also, as also Leo referred, there are several surveys done by different enforcers or carbon tracker or other institutions about this from the 2-3 years back. Also from auditors' report, and there was nothing. The results were really poor. But now, after bringing the theme up, and also, of course, because the climate change and its impact are becoming increasingly relevant to all entities and all humans on this planet from year to another. So we have seen a great progress, I think, in the financial reporting. And in the enforcement perspective, you always have to act based on the regulations in force. So it's kind of from the IFRS standards perspective, what can we require, what should be there, and also from the, of course, from the consistency perspective, that what should be there. And now, as Verena already mentioned, we had a working group in ESMA, and we went through many European financial statements from this perspective, from all countries nearly. The report was published in end of October, and it includes these practical examples. And why we had to, or we wanted to, as enforcers, to publish this kind of report is that there were no examples. We wanted, of course, to enhance disclosure of, for example, climate change impacts in financial reporting, because it's quite evident that it's very material and relevant to many industries already and many entities. And my experience from Finland, for example, was from last year. Before we published this report, we had already enforced this topic, and I was asking one board member that, have you recognized this theme at all? That, what do you think that, if you have recognized it, why is there nothing in the financial statements, for example, in many companies? And they said that, yes, we have recognized this as board members, but it's very difficult to find the right words because there are no examples. So I think in this sense, this was also the aim from ESMA to publish some practical examples, real-life examples of the topic. But it seems that it's going in a good direction, I think. We have seen good examples, which hopefully motivate then also other entities. And I also know that IASB is having also thoughts about this and a project about this to publish examples. But this is only climate topic, as you said, also because it's the most relevant and most evident at this stage.
I think we will see more going forward also on the other aspects of the E and of the S, at least. We will have a Slido polling question now, at least I hope we will get it on screen. Looking at, trying to bring it up. But it's a very easy question, so I'll read it out to you while it comes up. You can have your thoughts about it and then vote on Slido. The question is, should an entity's net zero commitments be recognized in the entity's financial statement of financial position? So a very easy question. You can say yes, all commitments should be recognized, and hence the current IFRS needs to be changed. Or no, the commitment should only be recognized if they meet the current requirements under IFRS. And all other net zero commitments should be disclosed in the financial statements. And the third option is that no, you should stick with the current recognition and measurement requirements in IFRS, but other net zero commitments should be disclosed in the sustainability statement. And the last answer is I don't know or I don't care. But if you don't care, you don't need to answer this poll, to be honest. So we will continue, and then with the next question, and then I will show you the results. At the moment, you know, all the panelists are members of EFRAG's Connectivity Advisory Panel, and it's I think an observation from this 40 minutes of conversations that they are very well behaved today.
This can change.
This can change once we go properly off script and then derail the entire discussion. A lot of discussions we are having, and I think that's also part of that, you know, understanding each other, is a lot of challenges are being brought up in, you know, discussions around, you know, financial reporting being incomplete, is to explain when something is mentioned as a matter of a material matter in the sustainability report, why it's not reflected in the financial statements. And I think that's a lot of the part of the discussions we have is that it's inconceivable to some that something that is relevant for one part of a report, a corporate report, is not mentioned at all in the other part of that same report. And Kirsten, you have probably dealt with these issues maybe a couple of years, so your view on this one.
Yeah, I am quite convinced that all material ESG topics have the potential to become financially material. But they are not necessarily defined already to be financially material. But all those material ESG topics, and probably some that we haven't thought about, have the potential to become black swans. But as we do not know where and when the black swans will land, it is very difficult or almost impossible to guess about potential financial impacts in the future. For those ESG topics where the financial consequences are already identified, it's different, and that should, of course, be included in the financial statements as applicable. But please be reminded that ESG topics or ESG reporting is to a large degree very forward-looking, while financial statements are more reporting on what has happened, not only, but much more than ESG reporting. I do not believe that it should be necessary for each indicator to explain why financial consequences have not been reported. I had a meeting with EY last week, and they told me that they had so far counted 1,057 different ESG indicators in the ESRSs. Saskia, you look a bit surprised. Yeah. But that means that it would be a huge job to explain every single time why we have not written about this in the financial statements. We can, of course, on a general basis, explain what kind of information from the ESG statements have been included in the financial statements and references from where it's relevant, and what kind of information has not been included in the financial statements. We have, by the way, lots of financial indicators in the ESG reporting that are not directly linked with the IFRS, but which we are using the same sources for as for the financial reporting. We get them from our accounting department, but they are still not directly comparable with the financial statements. The EU taxonomy is one example. The GRI tax reporting is another example, and I could also mention the Norwegian country-by-country reporting requirements, which I assume I'm more familiar with than most of the other ones present here. Thank you.
Kirsten. Leo, what's your view?
Yeah, so if you, and we had a lot of significant debate about this, Jens, already in our panel about, so should you now report on everything and explain why it's not material if you mention it in the management report, somewhere in the sustainability report? And I guess the answer to that is not necessarily, but then the question is, okay, how do we make that judgment? And I've been pointed out by the IASB that they already have a good example in their practice statement on materiality, where it explains a situation where a company is mentioning something in the management report, and then asks the question, is it now also their task to, in the financial statements, explain why it doesn't affect the financial statements? So we also thought about, should there be a rebuttable presumption, for example, right? So if you mention something in the management report, doesn't that automatically mean that you at least have to explain why it doesn't affect the financial statements, if you think that's the case? That might be one way to go. It's just a question, okay, today we're talking a lot about climate, and hopefully in a few years from now we speak less of climate and more of other sustainability topics, and does that now mean you have to mention that as well? The other thing is, what it tells us is that, yes, there could be illustrative examples, but the IASB decided to put that into a practice statement, which is outside let's say, the set of standards, so has no authority in terms of the standards themselves. So this might be one way to improve the standards and put them into, for example, an illustrative example of IS1, to just point out to people that for investors there's not just quantitative materiality, there's also qualitative materiality. So if in a sector something is generally relevant, if you're in that sector, could be expected to be affected as well, and if you're not, then explain why not. So that actually might be a good way to at least point people to some guidance that we already have out there. So that is the other thing that I want to mention is, of course, we have in the sustainability report in the EU at least impact materiality as well as financial materiality, whereas in the financial statements you only have financial materiality. So there may be some good reasons why something is mentioned in the management report, but maybe not mentioned in the financial statements, or at least not considered material for the financial statements. Although hopefully we can come back to that later on.
Thank you, Leo. Can we bring up the result of the Slido poll? Probably evenly split.
Kann ich noch was dazu sagen?
Nee, können Sie klar. Ich mache das und können Sie noch was. So the front runner is no. I'm a bit surprised actually, but maybe it's enough accountants still in the room. I think in the morning the outcome would be different, but you're the backbone of the corporate reporting ecosystem. So, and the second in is yes, all commitments should be recognized, which is certainly something you hear a lot these days on the street, but there's sometimes, in my view, only so much financial reporting can actually do. Carsten, you wanted to come into the previous question.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, for us users, what will be of essential is to explain your double materiality assessment. How did you proceed? What came out of it? Because in the past, I've seen that some minor issues have become big swans and impacted the financial accounts to a huge effect. I don't know whether you remember the asbestos crisis in the US, where it came up that, well, as an insurance analyst with some insurers which were concerned, and then also reinsurers, that in some buildings this material was used, causing some health damages. And then all the courts jumped on it, and it became a really huge financial burden to the companies. And suddenly a minor thing, which we would have reported in the under just the impact materiality, became such a huge financial factor. So I think this is already given. And I think, again, for us, the most valuable item would be the double materiality assessment. How do you proceed? What's your logic behind it? And then give us a story which is not trying to explain everything, that all the standards, you make a tick, I've reported this, this, and this, but what's your story leading to the expected profit in the end?
Thank you, Carsten. In the various fora committees and other groups we're discussing connectivity, one pattern emerges, and it's also been mentioned by Verena Ross, is time horizons. There's this extreme view saying financial reporting is backward-looking and sustainability reporting is forward-looking. I think the truth is in the middle somewhere. We have a lot of forward-looking information also in the financial statements. Think about fair value accounting or impairment testing. But indeed, it comes from, when we think back to Luca Pacioli, it was keeping record of something that has happened. in your view, what is the role of time horizons in relation to connectivity? Sirku, maybe.
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. And when we think about the concept of connectivity, and also the question of this overlapping of information or double reporting, it's very important to understand that the time horizons, they differ between sustainability reporting and also financial reporting, as also the materiality concept. And I'm not only talking about the impact materiality, also the financial materiality concept is also, of course, a bit different. But it is also true that in the balance sheet, in financial reporting, there are not that many items. It's fewer items that are kind of include forward-looking information, such as cash flow estimates or such other items. But for me, I think the time horizons, forward-looking information, it's one of the main elements of the connectivity. Since if we think about for example, now it's an easier example to think about climate impacts, climate change impacts, for example, or transition plans, and what are the financial impacts of them. We, of course, because it's in the future, also we have to look into the future, and we have to estimate, and we have to have scenarios for 1 year, 1 to 5 years, and even over 5 years. And without that, without those time aspects, we wouldn't actually have the complete picture if we would only stop at the financial statements. So I think with these time horizons, we have a more complete picture of the financial impacts of, for example, sustainability topics. And this is how we actually achieve true connectivity and also the kind of consistency. But for me, this is a key element in the connectivity.
Carsten.
I think this is an excellent question, actually, because it might change the whole behavior of financial markets. Because what do we do on equity markets currently? We look at the quarterly results. We look at short-termism. There's trading going on the expected quarterly results. We do not wait for annual reports to be published, only on guidance given by the companies, and then a story is made and stocks going up or down. Now you bring in this long-term element. This very long-term element. So suddenly you have to adjust your expected profits, not on a quarterly basis, but on a yearly long basis. And this might change the culture. I mean, it might even question the fast close. That's something which is always it's my favorite question. Why do I need a fast close if I have to bring into line sustainability reporting and financial reporting? I think the horizon will lengthen on the financial side and be more aligned to the sustainability part. Perhaps not one-to-one, but it's going to change a bit the culture.
Thank you, Carsten. I thought it is, as I said, it's already a good reflection of the discussion we're having at the Connectivity Advisory Panel we have between the sustainability reporting pillar, the financial reporting pillar, but also in other groups. So it is important we discuss these topics. Before we bring that panel to a close, I'd like to have a few statements on 2 questions, very brief statements from all of you. Where do you expect that connectivity will be in the future? And what is your short closing message for this audience here? So I think we start with Leo this time.
Okay. Well, I think it was already said earlier today. If I sort of fast forward over the next couple of years, I'll see that the distinction between impact materiality and financial materiality will decrease or maybe even disappear for the same reasons as Kirsten meant, that in the long run it could also always have financial effects or financial risks. Second, I don't think that we will see a fundamental rethink of financial statements. I don't see any signs of the IASB or any other international organization waiting for that. But what I do see, and I think that links to Carsten, to your point, there will be more and more disclosures in the financial statements that go beyond, let's say, the current balance sheet dates, sort of thinking about, okay, what's the effect on current assets and liabilities, but looks forward a bit more, and that maybe a sort of morph into the interaction between, the phase 2 of our panel, Jens, where you actually see how can we integrate that in one report.
Thank you, Leo. Sirku?
Yeah, for me, even though in Europe we are not having integrated reporting in that way that we would have all the information in one report, we have two reports. We still, I think, we have to start thinking really about integrated, in an integrated way, and it's all stakeholders. And also, I think connectivity and this kind of integrated thinking is a very, very important tool for entities also for them to build up their strategies and to clarify the risks and possibilities also that result from sustainability topics. So in a way, integrated thinking, even though we have separate reports, and also connectivity as a tool to build sustainable strategies is what we have to think about.
Thank you, Sirku. Kirsten.
Yeah, I'm also thinking in the direction of integrated reporting. With the 1057 ESG indicators I just mentioned, few companies will need to report on absolutely all of them, but large companies will to a large degree report on very many of them. And all these will be required to include in the management report. And that's not an ideal situation from my perspective. My ideal situation would be to have one integrated high-level management report that contained risks and opportunities, strategy and operational performance, the financial statements, of course, and then ESG statements, separated all the details in a parallel report to the financial statements. There is the best intentions of the chosen model, but I really hope that our stakeholders will be able to find all the information. We have until now had ESG statements in parallel with the financial statement in our annual report, and we now have to put all these different bits and pieces of information and distribute it in the management report. And I'm not sure that it will be to the better for readability. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Karsten.
Yeah, I think, well, we are easy guys, analysts. So when we have one document, we have to look at both topics suddenly, sustainability and financial. And it will be more complete to make a statement such as the ESG performance of this company A improved in the last year, and the financials met our expectations or even outperformed it. This is a clear buy. I mean, this is a completer story than just saying, okay, we don't care about ESG, this is for the specialists, but on the financial performance went all right by the stock. So I think we will get there quicker than we think.
Thank you, Karsten. So before we bring this to a close, my three key takeaways from today is we have the theme of building bridges, and I think we have more common ground to build the pillars that will carry that bridge than we might think, actually. Connectivity will not happen overnight, so there will not be that miraculous document coming out saying, oh, this is how it works. It will take time. It will be a journey. It will require us to discuss from different perspectives and arrive at a consensus view on this. But as you said, Karsten, connectivity will happen. And if we all work together, I think it will happen faster than we think. So with that, thank you very much to the audience first for listening to us, but also to the distinguished panel. And I hope you will continue to contribute to our discussions at the connectivity panel. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, not completely at the end yet, because we still have one keynote speaker that I would like to announce. However, it will be through a video message, but the keynote speaker that I want to announce is Christine Lagarde, the ECB president since November 2019. She served since 2011 and 2019 as managing director of the International Monetary Fund. Prior to that, she served as a French Minister of Economy and Finance and before that, she was the global chair of Baker & McKenzie, a very well-known law firm. May I ask your attention for Madame Christine Lagarde? Thank you.
Good afternoon to all of you. Andy Warhol remarked that, I quote, "People always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself." This applies as much to corporate reporting as it does to life in general. Almost a decade ago, the EU adopted its first directive aimed at broadening firms' non-financial disclosures. Today, we have reached the point where we are giving sustainability reporting the same importance as financial reporting. When the first sustainability reports are issued in 2025, and we reflect on the accomplishment of the Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive, the CSRD, we should remember the instrumental role that EFRAG has played in its success. Patrick de Combourg, merci. By delivering the necessary standards, EFRAG has contributed to making sustainability reporting more tangible, reliable, and comparable. It will become more tangible because the CSRD offers a clear framework to assess sustainability performance and manage related risks based on the principle of double materiality. It will become more reliable as the required materiality assessment guarantees the quality of information disclosed. And it will become more comparable thanks to the mandatory reporting requirements, plus the collaborative efforts of EFRAG and the International Sustainability Standards Board, thank you, Emmanuel Faber, which have made both frameworks interoperable. Means that that comparability will not stop at our borders. These steps forward will transform the landscape for sustainable investing and help integrate Europe's capital markets, especially the burgeoning market for green investment. That will put investors in a better position to assess whether companies are living up to their sustainability commitments and to make informed, long-term investment decisions. In turn, this will allow supervisors to assess better how investors are managing their risks. And a robust reporting framework will allow us, central banks, to integrate climate-related financial risks into our risk management frameworks. Of course, when the directive is fully implemented, the Eurosystem will accept as collateral in its credit operations only marketable assets and credit claims from companies and debtors that comply with the CSRD. But the work is not yet done. In our pursuit of a harmonized and comprehensive reporting landscape, we need to transcend silos and fully integrate sustainability reporting into regular financial reporting. Sustainability is not merely a supplementary component, nice to have. No, it is a fundamental driver of long-term value creation and risk management. So it should be at the heart of corporate decision-making. You see, as we face the challenges and embrace the opportunities before us, we should recognize and appreciate the invaluable role played by the Commission and EFRAG in forging a path towards a sustainable and transparent corporate reporting landscape. Through our collective resolve, we are meeting the needs of the present while ensuring that future generations can meet their own needs. And in the spirit of Andy Warhol, we are changing things ourselves. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, some closing remarks and then some small further information. So what did we hear today? An important part was, of course, and I think that Christine Lagarde replayed it and resaid it again in our state of play, it is time to continue. Point one. We must be proud of our achievements. Now we should implement them, reduce the climate risk globally for John and Mary, and you know who said that. Capital markets have a role to play. Trust from and make sure the right information gets to the investor. Who would have thought, said Emmanuel, that Europe would be so material for this global baseline? Both parties, EFRAG and IASB, made the necessary efforts to align the substance and are focusing on interoperability as well as not only IASB and EFRAG, but also GRI. The Commissioner was very clear. We must finish what we started. And I know that Patrick had to start his speech when he should have been finished already, but he regained a lot of time there. Thank you. But the Commissioner said, we must finish what we started. Our companies earn it. Let us implement the transition now. Let's use digitalization efforts to make sure it works and end, of course, as well with the role that ESMA needs to play. She also mentioned the European single access point, and we know that this is still an issue. Certainly if we're going to discuss the same items on sustainability for SMEs. We then looked in, how does this work further? How can we make sure that the collaboration, the journey, the transparent ideas, funding, and speeding up the implementation of all of this will need to happen? And I quote Elko, do not circumvent the rules. We must fix the risks. But also a very important part that was taken up by other people, train the trainer. If we want this to be successful, not only the implementation, but also training, also possibilities for questions and answers will need to be foreseen. In short, it's also obvious that there is not one system. There will be different systems, but that will be governed through the interoperability. And that will make sure that we have an implementation that works. And last but not least, the connectivity that was mentioned between the financial reporting and the sustainability reporting, and that has to be future-oriented, is leading us to building those bridges. I would like to have, and maybe it's already there, the next slide, which is a slide on our strategy. So what we did at EFRAG, and I think it fits really the different topics that we discussed today, we finished our strategy for the coming 4 years, 2024 to 2027. We know that we are working in a challenging and rapidly changing environment that are setting the new conditions for the success of EFRAG. And EFRAG organization is growing in all possible ways as a result of its expanding mission. The new pillar on sustainability, the expanded governance structure, the expanded membership, increased staff. We went from 20 to 50 people. If we check the budgets, we will need to go to 70 people. So we will need also extra resources for that. But one thing is for sure, EFRAG's operational or overall objective is and remains being Europe's voice in corporate reporting. And that is with the idea to further develop its thought leadership and key contributions to the development of high-quality corporate reporting, leading the European public interest. Okay. So what is our strategy? Well, we have 2 pillars. That was exactly what we were discussing today. Strategic objectives and priorities for the financial reporting pillar, where we influence the international standard setting process so that the resulting IFRS accounting standards are fit for use within Europe. And the second pillar, of course, strategic objectives and priorities for the sustainability reporting pillar, ensuring successful development and implementation of the ESRS, interoperable with the international standards of the IASB and GRI. But in order to do so, EFRAG's objective and priorities for governance, structure, funding and administration are really the conditions for successful work by EFRAG. And we are continuously working on this through the organization, running the organization, through the CEO, the COO, and the admin board. Because we need to ensure proper funding while remaining independent. We need to ensure that EFRAG is an attractive organization to work and has sufficient, excellent human resources. And we know that we're also working on that to get those people and to get the conditions, let's say, less strict to be able to have these people. And last but not least, ensure EFRAG's governance and due process is fit for its mission. And that is a never-ending story. It means it moves, and it will continue to move. This is the strategy that we want to achieve over the coming 4 years, and we will do that with the complete team of all boards and different people and people that work for EFRAG. For today, I would like to thank everybody that was here. I would really like to thank the speakers, the panel members, the different people that were traveling coming up to here. I would like to thank Saskia for organizing this, because you cannot imagine how much work that is, including the team of EFRAG. There is a reception now, so I thank you very, very much. But before you go, I need to show you the last slide still, which is, as last year, we still have Friends of EFRAG. If people would like to contribute, you know we're still looking for extra funds. Thank you very much. I will talk at the reception.